When you've had a long week and want to mix it up with something new and interesting to eat, try Blue Apron's 2 or 4 serving menu plans with those hard-to-find ingredients sure to spice up your weekend. With 60-plus options each week, you can choose from an ever-changing mix of high-quality meat, fish, vegetarian, WW recommended, and wellness offerings. Order now and get $110 off across your first 5 orders when you visit blueapron.com/unique.
Alright, g'day everyone. Welcome to the direct-to-video connoisseur. My name is Matt, and as always, I'm joined by Jamie. Jamie, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well.
Yes, got ourselves an Aussie flick this evening.
That's right. With a Trenchard Smith.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what I was trying to say.
yeah. He's done quite a bit, hasn't he, Mr. Trenchard Smith?
Yeah, he has. And I think that our good friend John Cross did. Well, I know he was prepping to do one. I can't remember whatever. Oh, shoot. He was prepping to do. I think he was going to do an interview with him, and then cover basically all of his films. And I don't know whatever ended up happening with that.
Does he have like 60-something movies?
Got a ton.
Or maybe he's done some TV shows too. He did like Silk Stockings episodes and, Flipper
Which
episodes.
I am a big fan of. I love Silk Stockings.
Yeah, me too. That was one of the better TV shows. One of the better, noirish detective shows on TV.
I think it has the best intro ever. And I tried to get Brian into that recently, and we only got through 2 episodes, and then he just kind of was like, let's watch something else. But I'm going to make him soldier through, but maybe not all at once. I'll just stick an episode in on occasion, and eventually he will come to love it as I do. I am convinced.
Am I wrong in thinking that show really hit its stride in the 2nd or 3rd season?
No, you were not. I think exactly the same thing. And so that's what I keep telling him. I'm like, if we can just get through the first, I think you'll appreciate it a lot more. Because, in the first, especially in the first episodes, but particularly in the first season, they're still coming to their own. They're setting sort of the rules for the show. And there are a lot of things that they don't keep going into the subsequent seasons. They drop a lot of the silly stuff and sort of find their stride. So
yeah, well, because didn't the show, it started as like some sort of like late night TV programming on CBS, and then it moved to USA. Isn't that how that worked?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. There was another show called Sweating Bullets that was on.
It also got sexier when it went to USA.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a sort of a teen watching that show, I appreciated that.
Yeah, it was really
definitely better than the upside down scrambled spice channel that I
yes.
that I had access to otherwise.
Yeah, it had like all of the things I liked about Miami Vice, but it didn't have that sort of like trendy MTV aspect that Miami Vice had. It really was like, the good, it had the Florida affluence. It had a lot of, I guess it was darker. It didn't have the pastels either, but it still had that film noir vibe to it. But it really was film noir set in Florida. I thought it just, like you said, once it moved to USA, it really, really had all of that element down.
Yeah, I mean, like in the first season, it was really goofy. It had a lot of neon and like in the police station, and their houses were like, what cop is like this except for them in Miami Vice. But then it's sort of toned down a little bit as far as that goes, and became a little more normal looking. It still had it was still stylized still, but it got better.
Yeah.
So, but if you watch first season, it is totally silly as far as the police station is concerned, where they go and see Ben Vereen so he can mock yell at them.
Yes. Yeah. Once they added Lipschitz, he was one of the better police chiefs.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too Mitzi Capture and Rob Estes, which I mean Rob Estes, on the surface, and maybe was he in those very early seasons? He was,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
he started with Mitzi in the very beginning.
Yeah, and so I can see where Brian's coming from with that too, because Rob Estes seems just like your classic lunkhead kind of pretty boy guy, but he really gets into that role as you move ahead. He and Mitzi Capture also develop a really great chemistry that works really well too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so
I think.
yeah, it's yeah. So Brian, stick it out. You're gonna appreciate it. Jamie is not steering you wrong on this one. And I know it's not coming from me, making the recommendation is not the best thing because unlike Jamie, I have steered you wrong a lot of times, Brian, and you've had to sit through a lot of bad ones because of me. So
But that's not because you knew it. You
right.
didn't, you had no experience. You had no prior experience with those films.
That's
You
right.
knew as much as I did going in.
Right.
So, I don't blame you for that.
Yeah, so the best way to go, maybe, Brian, is that when I first heard of Silk Stockings, I also did not think it was a good idea. And just happened to watch it. USA would be on in the evenings or whatever. They'd have like reruns, a couple rerun episodes over the weekend or something, and I would find myself watching it and realize like, wow, I like this show. So maybe that's the best advice I can give.
I think it just sort of grows on you.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. But yeah, so stick it out, Brian. Now, Brian, I realized from what you told me last night, he was in agreement with me about Drive Hard being a
Oh,
not so
yes.
much.
Yeah, he wasn't real nuts about that one. On the other hand, did not dislike it. I thought it was kind of fun. I laughed out loud several times.
Now, yeah, I'm curious about that because I thought the comedic timing between Cusack and Thomas Jane was left a little to be desired.
Well, I will give you that, but I do think that there were some standalone comical scenes. For instance, when they wound up at the winery
Hmm.
and the wedding reception, but no one else was there yet. And then oddly, the old man who owns the winery just came driving up in a Mustang GT, which which was convenient for them to take off in after. Does that really seem like the car that dude would be driving? Like, I mean, I'm not one to tell people what they can and can't drive, but it just doesn't seem to fit. But anyway, then what I found funny there was, the old woman with the gun coming. I mean, she was serious, man. Just coming out, just shooting at him, and I thought that was hilarious. But
Yeah, I mean, I like some. I see. For me, I guess with that scene, and maybe I've become jaded and I've become a not so nice guy with these movies. But I just felt like it was like, hey, irony. Never would have expected it. Like what's the craziest thing we can do? The old lady, and maybe I needed to lighten up and just let that be funny. But I guess I just I've had too many telemarketers in my time. I've seen too many commercials for rip-off for-profit colleges during episodes of Maury that I'm just too jaded at this point, and I can't take anything. I can't laugh just for the sake of laughing.
well, I mean, at no point did I sit in front of the television going, "Oh my God, this movie is awesome." That did not happen. But I didn't find it egregious. Like it was okay. I didn't hate my time with it. I'm a big John Cusack, Thomas Jane fan, although I'm not a fan of his hair in this film. I much prefer Thomas Jane like circa, you know, Deep Blue Sea or The Punisher. Like I want Thomas Jane with short hair.
Yeah.
But so I wasn't a big fan of that, but I do like him. I think they were an interesting pairing. I don't know if that is a combination I would ever have thought would make a good team. And after seeing the film, I still don't know if I think they make a good team. But separately, I enjoy them both. So,
Yeah, it did.
you know.
I did not like Thomas Jane. I think I don't know. I mean, I know he did romantic comedies. I know he did ones with like Cameron Diaz in the early 2000s. I think when you mentioned Deep Blue Sea, I think I think of Punisher that he did as well, which I reviewed for the blog a while back when I was doing like kind of like what I deemed bad comic book movies, a bad comic book movies week. But I think Thomas Jane, um, like you said, I think his hair in this. I don't know if he was like a Bon Jovi, like he was, the bassist for Bon Jovi had a broken ankle or something, so he was filling in for that tour. I don't know.
Was that supposed to be what happens to Americans when they move to Australia?
They become Bon Jovi.
Maybe he spends a lot of time on a surfboard since he's not racing cars anymore. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that whole, I think the whole Australian Americans in Australia thing. I almost kind of feel like they could have done more with that. They just did a little bit of like, oh, you're driving on the wrong side of the road. I think I think we could have seen some more. Like maybe the old lady tries to serve them a Vegemite sandwich or something. And it's or.
Do they still eat that down there? Is that still a thing?
I mean, my idea of Australia is just that it's a bunch of Paul Hogans walking around going, "That's not a knife. This is a knife. No, this is a knife. We're both in Australia. They're both big knives."
I haven't heard anything about Vegemite since Murray Head told me about it, and I
Yes.
don't know if I just didn't know if it was still a thing. It might be. I don't know.
Okay. Yes. Brian just said kangaroos could have attacked. Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. I think for an Australian movie, this could have been more Australian. I mean, and Jen made the point about the great radio station establishing voiceover at the beginning. Get all everybody on the Gold Coast. We're gonna do it's a nice day out today. Everybody's out and about. And it just kind of reminds you of those like '80s beach romp films. Like, hey everybody, Venice Beach. It's a great day. Like that guitar's
Yes.
playing the.
Well, you're watching the montage
Right.
of the people like throw their surfboards and their bags into their Jeep as
Yes.
they're heading off to the beach in the beginning of the film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
somebody's serving the volleyball.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Or basically the beginning of 90210. Just take that.
right.
Take
Yes.
the credits sequence of 90210. There you go.
Yeah, and then just add some guitar, and then just have the voiceover, and then of course you get our main characters from the romp in there. The early '90s DTV beach romp. Yeah, it had that vibe, but then Jen and I were both saying the guitar was like kind of bad, like '90s, not even like bad '90s action. It was like bad '90s a weekend syndicated action show music that was playing while they were like doing their chase scenes and whatnot. It just, I was wondering if I was watching like I don't know if I was going to say like an episode of Highlander. I guess it would have been like an offbeat chase scene in
Like
Highlander.
Renegade.
Renegade, yeah, definitely Renegade. Yeah, if it had more honky tonk in it, it really would have been Renegade. Man, yeah, because Renegade always had a little southwestern feel to it, just to kind of really drive home. Probably a little more horn inspired, but still, it had that feel. Yeah, of this could have been the show that was the lead-in to Renegade. Drive hard. You see the advertisements for it. Yeah, the action-packed Friday night, starting off with Drive Hard from 8 to 9, and then 9 to 10, Renegade with Lorenzo Lamas.
I'll tell you what else I didn't like about this damn movie was that kid.
Yep. The daughter.
I wanted to slap her
Yeah.
so fucking hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, who is this kid, and why are you such a little bitch?
Yeah.
And I was not a fan. Not a fan of the fucking kid. But like I said, there were things about it I did like. But I didn't have my head in the sand during this film. I am fully aware that there was a whole lot wrong. There's a whole lot of nope going on in this movie.
Well, so let's talk about the kid here because I also was not a fan of that, but I'm never a fan of kids in movies. When is that done well? I mean, I guess I have to kind of say Annie. I guess even though I'm not the hugest fan of Annie, but I get why people like that one. But how many times does a movie work well with kids in them?
Well, I watched this movie last night called Clown, and of course there were kids in it.
Mhm.
They actually did really well. I was impressed with that, and I like the kid that was in this film, the main kid.
Right.
And other kids were eaten, so that's always a good way to deal with them.
Yes. Yeah, I'll give you. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I guess I have to give the film credit for the fact that even though the kid was annoying, at least the kid wasn't going along for the ride with them. Y-
Oh my goodness, that would have been
yeah.
unbearable.
I mean, could you have put it past this film to do that? Like, I gotta go pick up my kid from school. What? You gotta pick up your kid from school? Yes, I gotta pick up my kid. And all of a sudden, some offbeat guitar. They pull up to the thing. Whoa, where'd you get this car, Dad? Get in. Oh, are we hostages? Wow, awesome, Dad. Are you robbing banks? Awesome, Dad. And, more offbeat, witty humors, some of the looks between them. So I guess maybe, I've got to give the film credit for you know, uh, pulling back on the throttle just a little bit there and not going overboard like maybe they could have.
What I don't get is his whole, nope, I'm not going to take the money at the end of this. No, I don't want my cut.
Hmm.
And look at what?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it would be difficult. Oh, I suddenly have $3 million.
Hmm.
When I wasn't able to pay my child's private school tuition. Which, by the way, we're supposed to feel sorry for him, I guess,
Yep.
because he can't pay his private school tuition.
Yeah.
But even the headmaster's like, hey, there's always public school.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, there's always public school. And I'm like, yeah, dude, there's public school.
Yeah.
If you can't afford to pay for your kid to go to this, you know, fancy school, then send them to public school. That's what it's there for. I really don't feel sorry for you in that particular situation.
Well, we don't know what Australia's schools are like. It might be like the class of Newcomb High of the public
Well,
schools.
that's
So
true.
they have to. No, I know exactly what you mean. It's like of all the things to try to get us to feel sympathetic for, like, oh man, I can't make the payment on the Benz this month. I'm really in bad shape. Oh, we can't get the Persian black market caviar this month. We've got to.
We're gonna have to cut back on Cristal.
Right,
And
yes.
I don't give a shit, dude.
Right, yes. Yeah, we need to see like legit bills piling up, collection calls. I mean, you know,
Power being turned off.
yeah. Yeah.
Cars being repossessed.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Even then, it has to be a shitty car, and it has to
Yeah.
be their only one for me to really care. I mean, if it's our second car that's a BMW got repossessed, I'm not really gonna be that upset about it. But if it's like our only family car and it's a Chevy Nova and they took it,
Right.
then I might feel sad for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I think at that point I was already like I see for me at that point when the whole thing happened with the daughter and the school asking where the payment was for the private school, for the tuition. At that point I was like, where is my John Cusack? I'm paying for John Cusack here. He's all over. And of course I didn't have long to wait. He was only a few minutes away at that point, but I was already because I think in my head I thought John Cusack was going to be our driver. He was going to be our protagonist. And I guess that was my own fault because there was no place in the description that said anything about it having to be John Cusack as opposed to Thomas Jane.
I think you just wanted it to be
I
John Cusack.
I,
But why wouldn't you?
I know. You know what I want?
I wanted him to pull some of those sweet moves like he did at the end of Con Air.
Exactly. Exactly.
with the driving, I mean.
Hmm.
Or maybe even in like 2012. Right, he did some badass driving in 2012.
Yeah, or at the very least, maybe go to the police station with a boombox playing "In Your Eyes." I would have taken that.
No, how about the way that we got introduced to him,
Hmm.
though? When he, because of course Thomas Jane, in order to bring in some money, is working as a driving instructor,
Hmm.
and he has this 9 o'clock appointment in the morning, and he shows up late,
Hmm.
which again, am I supposed to feel sorry for him? I don't know. But he shows up late for work, and he's got this appointment with this guy, and it ends up being John Cusack, and John Cusack is also American, and he tells him he wants to learn how to drive in Australia.
Hmm.
Um, and then he's a terrible driver. I mean, he's just driving terribly all over the place. I'm guessing that part was played for comedy.
Hmm.
Not really sure where we got watch him, careen all over the road and nearly crash into things, and Thomas Jane going, "Oh my God," But I'm thinking, if this was your plan, like if you wanted to hire Thomas Jane to be a driver to rob this bank with you, did you have to go through that whole charade first of driving around poorly? You know,
I
couldn't you
agree.
just, you know, I don't know.
Like Brian
Seems
said,
like
it
there
took
would be a different
forever.
way to do
Yeah.
it. It did take forever. It was, like a good 15 minutes of just watching him drive around poorly, and then pulling over at a coffee shop and talking to him at the coffee and being very cryptic while he's talking to him at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
I'm like, get to it.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Well, because we knew what was going to happen.
I mean, it was only inevitable, and then it's not like there was like, oh my god, all the surprises. It was, it was there.
Right.
We're just sort of waiting for him to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, like he goes and gets him to drop him off at the bank so that he can pay him. Well, then he obviously is not making. Well, he's making a deposit, but it's not the legal kind.
Right.
And then, but we all know that as soon as he forces him to stop in front of the bank and leave the car running, we understand what's happening here.
Yes.
Somehow Thomas Jane doesn't, but we understand what's happening. And then, of course, he comes running back to the car, and you've got the whole Thomas Jane realize what's going on sequence, which also it takes him a little too long to get it.
Yes.
Especially when the rest of us have known, we knew 5 minutes ago what the plan was. So, I'm not really sure if we were supposed to be getting it when he did, because if that's the case, then damn.
Yes.
So, anyway.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought that was kind of lazy about this piece, I think the beginning part was this like lazy editing. I think they just kind of kept writing things that they thought were good, that for the rest of us were like, man, just get to the point. But I kind of feel like with the whole thing with the whole storyline, it felt like how do I want to say this? It felt like they were never in peril at any point. They had the daughter and the wife, and I know that's a classic trope, the damsel in distress thing, or the family in peril trope. So I'm not saying they needed to do it, but the fact that they've got them there, it was just kind of like, okay, I'm waiting for something. It seemed like at no point. I mean, Thomas Jane's only danger was from John Cusack, who I guess was supposed to be a sympathetic figure ultimately for us. But Cusack also, it's like they never, there's that towards the end, there's the whole thing of they're bringing out their best people. 25 minutes left in the movie, and now you're bringing out your best people. And the best people did absolutely nothing. They just showed up with a whole bunch of leather jackets on at a bar, and Cusack and Thomas Jane got away from them.
That whole setup was completely sloppy, and their best people, it looked as if they were basically running away like a bunch of pussies, is what
Yes.
from John Cusack and Thomas Jane. When they actually had more, of a fight put up with the gas station attendant that they dealt totally randomly in a scene earlier than that.
Yeah.
It's like one guy gave them more trouble than all of these biker people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what? Like, what also, what? Because how in the hell could they have predicted that they were going to stop at this place? Because the only reason they stopped at this place was because Thomas Jane decided he had to have a drink, and he had to have one right then.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have stopped there. So, but the people were already there when they got there.
Yeah.
So that makes no sense at all to me.
It was lazy writing. Lazy to not have them in any kind of peril. Lazy to, like you said, to if I'm gonna go with you and cut them some slack for the old lady, if I'm gonna call that one a plus, which I think I can still do that and still have enough of a bone to pick with this film.
You could totally see it coming, but it was still fun for me to watch it play out.
Yeah. So if I concede that one, I've still got all of these other scenes where nothing really happens ultimately. And
yeah, you win.
Well, no, yes, but you know what I mean. It's
you
like
do.
it's like what is going on here? And I think if you've got your best people, the best people need to come out maybe 10 minutes after the heist starts, maybe at the 35-minute mark as opposed to the hour mark. just it wasn't necessary. If at that point they couldn't do much with them anyway. What are you going to do with 25 minutes left? You're going to kidnap the daughter and the wife, and then what? We've got to get them there. That's going to take 10 minutes. Then you've also got 10 minutes of wrap up and 5 minutes of credits. So you've only got 5 minutes of the kidnapping. So it's kind of like, why even bother at that point?
Yep. Also, there's the whole point that this is completely far-fetched, and I wouldn't believe it for a minute. Um, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of movies that I enjoy that are far-fetched. That's a given.
Mhm.
But for instance, I'm a big Walking Dead fan.
Mhm.
Well, zombies are not exactly an actual peril, at least at this moment. I'm not saying they never will be, because Gordon, God knows I'm prepared. But currently, they're not a real peril. So that could be categorized as far fetched, and I still enjoy it. That's not the point. But the thing is, there's so many things going on here that just don't make any sense. I mean, John Cusack comes to Australia to pull this heist, and he's going to, but his being able to pull this off relies on getting Thomas Jane
Mhm.
to do this.
Right.
A plan that he did not have set out with Thomas beforehand. He pretty much just hijacked him and forced him to do this. Well, what if Thomas Jane hadn't showed up for work that day? What if he'd called in drunk? What if he had, anything along the lines could have just one step in another direction could have thrown this whole plan off kilter, and no career criminal, who John Cusack was, is going to rely on a slipshod plan like this,
Yeah.
or lack of a plan, as it were. Plus, you've got the local police and the FIB, and the FIB, that's from Grand Theft Auto. Jesus Christ. You've got the federal police
Yeah.
and the local police and the bad guy and all of his people, and they're all running around like this was Big Trouble or something, which, by the way, is a much better film. But but nothing ever seems to mesh properly.
Mhm.
It doesn't ever seem to fall into place. I just kind of feel like no one ever knows what the other one is doing. And then, yeah, I know I said in the beginning I did not hate this film, and I didn't. I still found it serviceable and enjoyable on several levels, but not because it made sense.
And I am going to give you the not hating it thing, because when you compare these, now Jen did say this was one of the worst movies she's ever seen. She had no time. She did not enjoy it at all. I think for me,
Tell her to hang out with us more.
well, she has been spared some of the real stinkers that we have done here. For example, I would say that this movie has more going for it than that Ninja Apocalypse one we watched. Just because it has John Cusack.
That did have, well, that's true. It did have some merit in that there was a lot of comedy that you could glean from that, just from making fun of it.
Mhm.
So that was one thing. But it's definitely better than that piece of crap that
Yeah.
with the, oh God, what was
Was
it?
it P90X?
Well, that one too.
Yes.
But also the Dolph Lundgren movie
Oh,
where
either of the two bad ones we did, the two duds.
he wasn't in it.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah.
It was about the kid who, I don't know. We spent like 20 minutes watching some guy drink all of his Kool-Aid, or I don't remember what it was, but
Yeah.
anyway, and the one where the kid was spent half the movie bandaging himself, and
Mhm. Yes. Yes.
there's a lot of them. We've done a lot of bad movies, and I think this is better than any number of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, there's sort of a two things at play here with John Cusack. I think there's that they're almost conflicting parts where, like, on the one, Brian just said yes, you have to our staying with.
Legendary. This is better than Legendary.
Exactly. Which I still have got to do that blog post on. I'm looking at the pictures on my dash right now of it and reminded of how bad that one was. And that's the one thing you could say about this film, I guess, John Cusack and Thomas Jane, is that well, the plot and the story was not, it was lackluster at best. It didn't necessarily waste the two of them. You know what I mean? They were doing a role that, it was, I guess it was kind of fun, but, if you see Thomas Jane and John Cusack in a film, I don't necessarily know what I expect from them, in a chase film kind of movie, but it at least delivered on what the cover was. It at least delivered on, what the synopsis was, and so I think in that respect, I see John Cusack. I don't, there's a part of me that's like, man, what happened to you, John Cusack? Why are you doing this movie of all movies to do that are direct to video? I don't know what the draw was with this one, and to be doing a film with Brian Trenchard Smith. But on the other hand, as a John Cusack fan, there was enough of him in it for me to go, okay, I kind of like this. I kind of liked his Chicago accent coming out a little bit, like when he said garbage. There was a few nice parts in it, and so I think on those scores, like, while I wouldn't necessarily recommend this movie, it, like you said, it's not the worst that we've tackled ones that are much harder to swallow here.
Oh, for sure. And did John Cusack take his sunglasses off at any point during this film?
No, Jen actually made that joke a few times. She's like, he still hasn't taken his sunglasses off yet.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if maybe he did toward the end, but I don't think he did. I think he went the entire film wearing sunglasses.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking in my head while I was watching the movie, I was like, did he have eye work done recently? Did he have some cataracts removed?
Yes.
What exactly is the reason for him not once removing his sunglasses? Because typically, relies on eye contact, on emotion through their eyes. I mean, it's a big plus.
Yeah.
And not once did we see his, and I could not quite figure out what the motivation was behind that, or if maybe, like I said, he'd had some eye work done recently or something. But
I mean, maybe he was really just being the character. Maybe kind of like, remember when we had Carl Urban as Judge Dredd, and he never took his helmet off the whole time, because that's not what Judge Dredd would do. I wonder if...
Well, yeah, but this isn't Judge Dredd.
No,
This is some criminal guy who really does have eyeballs, and he... I mean, I know Judge Dredd does too, but
yeah,
I don't know that would be the same.
Yeah, I was wondering.
That's the same.
Like in his mind, as a method actor or something like that, he's thinking like, oh, a real, bank robber wouldn't take his sunglasses off. Well, but I know what you mean too. Like, it was kind of like, man, at no point has he taken them off.
And it just seemed kind of bizarre. And then I started thinking, what do John... And I went through this whole long chain of thought in my head. And I was like, what do John Cusack's eyes look like? I don't know. And so I was trying really hard to picture him with eyes while I was watching this movie. You know how your brain does when you're not focused on what's actually happening. Because, like I said, there were some fun moments, but really the majority of this film was just them in a car. One car or another, it varied. But really, and how much of that do you need to see? So my brain was all over the place, including trying to fill in what John Cusack's eyes would look like if he had taken off his sunglasses, and I never did figure it out.
Aren't they like black pebbles? Like kind of like black pebbles?
I think that's about as close as I had come.
Yeah.
To putting them in there.
I had forgotten. You brought up 2012, and I had forgotten that that was him, because that came out. What was that? 2010 that came out? 2009 it came out. So that was 5-6 years ago ish. But 5 years ago, I mean, 2012. That was the summer blockbuster that year, or one of them anyway. And in 2009, and he was it. He was the marquee name in that film.
Yeah, that was his movie.
Yeah, and now, right after that he did Hot Tub Time Machine, and then I guess he did a couple others. He did The Raven, right? That was maybe his last one.
Which did not do well.
Right, and that was about it for him. Then that's it. Now he's doing direct-to-video, and he's doing small parts in bigger films. So that was it. I mean, that was quick. If I mean, 09, to be in 09 and to be the guy in 09, to still had that level of cachet that he was. Did I just say cachet? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say cachet. Just to I don't like.
Not offended. It's
Oh,
okay.
okay, all right. I didn't want. Yes, cash. Yeah, that just seems. But
Well, the thing that John Cusack is an enigma in Hollywood. He's a rare breed of actor who, throughout his career, has waxed and waned
mhm.
constantly. And you never know when he's going to come popping up in something big. And you never know when he's going to dwindle down to nothing for a while. He just sort of rides the waves and, crests and falls and crests and falls. And that's what he does. That's what he's always done. So if you look way back to the 80s, you'll see John Cusack, and then you won't see him for a while, and then he'll pop up again, and then you won't see him for a while. And you like when I remember being when he was in Con Air, I was like, "Well, look at him having a big role."
Right.
And I feel like I haven't seen him in a while. And then, he won't do anything for a little while after that, and then all of a sudden, bam, he's summer blockbuster 2000 in 2012, and um, then you don't see him for a while. But in between there, he did Identity. So it's just you never know. He's a strange one,
You know,
and I think his sister is exactly the same.
yeah, I was going to say the same thing when you mentioned Identity. It's like he kind of went on another streak where he wasn't doing too much. I guess America's Sweethearts, High Fidelity, but like High Fidelity was more of like an indie thing. But you're right, like he does Identity, which was the kind of a big, that was a big one at that time as far as a Hollywood thriller.
Hmm?
And then
Had a lot of people in it.
yeah, Runaway Jury was right after that. Must Love Dogs was one of the big romantic comedies at that time. Um, and then he kind of falls off again until 2012. Or I guess he did 1408, which was not that
Oh,
big though, was it?
um, you know, I don't know how well it did at the box office, but it's pretty well known among
Yeah.
horror fans. I don't know, and it's, it's it's looked upon favorably. I think for the most part, got some good reviews. I don't, but like I don't know what the box office turnout was for it. I don't imagine it was massive, just because it's horror fans typically aren't. But respectable.
Well, let's take a look here. Actually, 130 million worldwide it grossed.
Whoa, better than I thought.
Did it
Okay.
opening weekend of 20 million opening weekend. So yeah,
Okay,
it
that
was.
seems about right.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems pretty what I was along the lines of what I was thinking. But I guess word of mouth went on to, I guess, garner more interest, and it ended up doing better. I think it's a solid flick.
I mean, it's a Stephen King one too, and I know maybe not now as much as, but I think back then even still, when Stephen King's name was attached to a horror film, it would be enough to generate buzz. I mean, of course, me, I was living in Maine. I was living in Portland, Maine at the time that film came out, so anything Stephen King does in Maine is a big deal. So if he's, Stephen King could fart and it would make news. And so he could do a film about write a book about farting, and everybody would read it, and it would be like, a college course at UMaine. So yeah, that's one thing. When I was at UMaine, not to get too far off track here, but when I was studying German,
Because we never do
we
that.
never, I know, but when I was studying German at UMaine, Stephen King donated all of his books translated into other languages to the language department at UMaine. So I translated the first 3 pages of Pet Cemetery from German. It had originally been, it was English to German, and then I was translating it from German back to English for my translation class. So, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Some of the terms I had to remember, I had to translate were like a six-cylinder engine, I think was one phrase he had in there. A few other ones that I wasn't expecting, and of course the German trying to make sense of his English also didn't help me at all. Yeah, so I don't know. 1408. There must be a copy of it in German sitting there on the shelves at UMaine right now.
Did you ever see his house?
Yeah, you can see. I've never really seen it, but yeah, he lives. He has a big mansion in Bangor, and you can drive by.
No, I love it. I mean, I've seen it in photos. I've never seen it in person. But I've always wanted to drive by it just because I love the gate with the gargoyles
Hmm.
and everything. I mean, that's just, to me, perfection.
Yeah, and I think he had a son that was a year older than me. And so some kids that I would see at UMaine who went to Bangor High School that were a year older talked about being in school with him.
Huh.
I think he went to public school. So there you go, Thomas Jane. But Stephen King is like, yeah. It's funny because John Ford, considered one of the greatest movie directors of all time, is also from Maine. He's from Portland, Maine, and nobody ever talks about him in Maine. But Stephen King, it's like, whoa, Stephen King, maybe because he embraced being a Mainer, whereas John Ford moved out to L.A. and did his thing out there. But
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, because Stephen King's never left, has he?
I think he, maybe he has a place in L.A. But yeah, for the most part, he's just kind of, kept. At least he keeps the house there in Maine. And like I said, he went to UMaine, and so he does a lot for the school there too. So that, he keeps his Maine roots alive. Plus, his books often take place in Maine, which us Mainers really like that.
For sure.
We like it when our state is depicted as extremely creepy, because it is. It is creepy. Any place that gets dark at 4 p.m. in the winter is creepy. Now, from a writing standpoint, this film maybe could have used some Stephen King. But, I think,
Could have used some Rodney King.
Right.
I could.
Yes.
I mean, any Don King.
I
I
was
don't know.
I was trying to think of other kings, yeah. Billie Jean King? Is there a Billie Jean King?
Yeah, why? Yeah, tennis player. Why not?
Yes, yeah. Well,
Yeah, it could have used something. It was very. Yeah, what I find interesting is that it was very paint by number, but they didn't even stay within the lines when they were doing the paint by number. It was because it was messy.
yeah.
It was really messy.
It was messy, and they left some numbers out. It was kind of like my mom when we were growing up, and she'd want to, or even now when my niece and nephew visit, and she's looking for things to do, and it's like, we'd always be out of something. We'd always have something missing. So she's tried to make the best of the project. It's like, oh, paint by numbers. We don't have any blue. We'll just leave the blue out. We don't need blue. And this film left the blue out in a few cases, or left the green out, or a few colors. Or like you said too, it was messy. Which that would be my mom saying like, "Oh, that looks great. You did a great job there." And we've got things all outside the lines too. So, yeah, it works great when you're an 8-year-old or a 4-year-old at my parents' house, and you're having a fun afternoon with Grammy and Grampy, and Uncle Matt and whoever else is there. But when it's a movie that we're watching for an hour and a half, you need to have all the paint there if you're painting by numbers. And like you said, it's got to be inside the lines. We can't have it sloppy.
Yeah, it's Yeah, there's really not a whole lot more to say. I mean, I cannot personally endorse it. I certainly wouldn't go, yes, please run out and watch this movie. I was not upset with the time that I spent with it. I'm not angry that I watched it, but I would never tell anyone else to do it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, the film took place in Australia, but because the two main actors were Americans, plus the main baddie was also American. Oh, would you call him a baddie? Like, he didn't really shape out to be much of a baddie, did he?
No, I mean, the worst he got was when calling each other names over the phone.
Yeah.
And John Cusack referred to his fat ugly wife or something like that. And
Yes.
then he was getting all steamy. He's like, "What do you mean talking about my wife?" And then that's pretty much as angry as he got. He wasn't very threatening.
I was going to say, I wrote this down on my notes. He called his wife a hose beast.
A hose beast.
Use the
right.
term hose beast. If this film couldn't have been 90s enough, the wife was called a hose beast. The music, the insults. He also said somebody was quivering like a toothache. I didn't know toothaches
Yes.
quivered.
No, there were a couple of things that he said that I thought were kind of funny, but
Yeah. I don't know if
Um,
those are expressions in Australia.
well, I mean, hell, he was English. He
Yeah.
was American, so
Why would he say them right?
why would he say them? You know?
You're quivering like a toothache there, mate. I think you need to settle down there.
I mean, I think he's just putting words together. He's
Yeah.
just making that stuff up as he goes along.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like...
You're as scared as a horn.
Yes.
What?
I think that was another one, wasn't it? Did he say...
Oh, I'm as hungry as a ceramic tiger. What?
Yeah.
he's just
and,
making stuff up.
and we'll buy it. I mean, that could be too. I didn't really look where this. I think it was released in, pretty much in a whole bunch of foreign countries. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're just trying to really screw with the people who are watching. Speak English as a second language, and they're.
Look, they're having a hard enough time as it is. Don't make it any more difficult for them.
I know.
They're going to come to America and start spouting these things, and they're going to say in broken English that someone is as quivering as a toothache, and then people are just going to think that they got it wrong.
I know, and then I've got to deal with it in one of my classes when a student says to me,
Right.
quivering like a toothache. Isn't that a saying? No, and actually I saw the movie you got that from, and don't ever pick up any English from that movie.
Well, you know what? The next time somebody comes to you with one of those things, just be like, look, have you been watching a Brian Trenchard Smith movie?
Exactly. That's I don't know, Brian Trenchard. Okay, well, let me just say, I have a feeling, You'd be surprised.
Stop it with the lingo. It doesn't work.
American movies and American slang, they become canon law for all students learning English as a second language.
Imagine.
Do you know they're
It's a bar soap.
when they ask you about a prom, their idea of what the prom is some situation where there's a mean popular girl that's trying to be the prom queen. That there are. This is serious too. They asked me about this, and I try to explain to them what the prom queen is. How like a lot of communities they don't really even compete for it. That they'll give it to maybe somebody who's developmentally delayed or has a disability. Something nice. It's like a nice award. It's not this whole thing where people are angling for the job and that some girls.
And we didn't even have one when I graduated. There, we didn't have a prom queen.
They gave it to the two people in our school when I was at my junior prom. It was I think the girl who did the most to organize the prom and the guy who was on the dance floor the most. That was
Nice.
what they did. So
That makes sense.
yeah, but but that's what they think. Our culture is like one of the things I always hear from my students is that English spoken by people from England is more formal and more refined and more, whereas American is just full of slang. And it's because our culture is transmitted through all of our TV shows that get out there and all of our movies, whereas their culture comes through the BBC or even their BBC TV shows are, they speak English at a certain level where, for us it's just, here you go. Here's the Kardashians, here's
A bunch of teenagers and the Sopranos.
Exactly. So it's like that's what they get, and they're like, so you want to know what American culture's like? Here it is. This is your prom. This is what American high school is like. This is
Well, hell, when I was when I did the playlist for the '70s, and I think you guys were listening at this point when I was talking about the Brady Bunch.
Yes.
How before I got to high school, Brady Bunch, I was sure that when I got to high school, I was going to be wearing a scuba outfit. I was going to be making volcanoes at home,
Yes.
and I was going to be trying to get Davy Jones to sing at my prom. And that is the way it is. That's the way high school is, according to the Brady Bunch. None of that stuff happened. And I was like, man, this isn't like the Brady Bunch at all. But I mean, that's where I got my idea about what high school should be.
And it makes sense.
And it was as inaccurate as spaghetti with tomato sauce.
Right. Yes. Yeah. But at least I don't know if you had this program in your school, but in my school they had a program where we were in 8th grade. We went to see high school for like a day. So we had to see what it was like. At least get this. So we had some idea. But of course, I grew up in a small town, so we always had the kids in the neighborhood who were older that would tell us what it was like. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like, if it does that for us, right? If it gives us this idea of what these, our ideas of what California are like, L.A. I always thought L.A. was what I see in the movies, and I actually went to L.A. and saw that it wasn't anything like that at all. If these are what are what inform us about our own culture, just imagining what it's like when it's imported to the rest of the world.
That's an excellent point. I mean, do you know how many people have a fucked up mouth?
Mm-hmm.
And like when people find out that I'm from Georgia, I get some of the most bizarre shit thrown at me. I'm like, what are you talking? Did you is the only thing you ever watched like Dukes of Hazzard? Is that is
Yes.
that it? But they just have this really interesting view of what life is like in the South, and you know, hate to for anyone out there who may still be confused. No, we don't marry our brothers and sisters. It's not the way. Well, most of us don't.
Well, and you know what's fascinating when you talk about the South, I think that's really, really changed. All these reality shows that are based on like southern backwoods folk that and it's become
Like Duck
Duck
Dynasty,
Dynasty.
or Honey Boo Boo.
Yeah, now there's like even with the 19 kids and counting, it's like really it's like it seems like all of these cable channels they just want to get the next like backwoods like backwoods family, get them on TV and just see how long they last before they say something inflammatory over the internet and have to get their show shut down.
That's pretty much what happens, isn't it? Um, yeah, and the funny thing is that I'm just like, oh, people have a fucked up view of the South, and then of course there's Honey Boo, Boo, which is really accurate. So it, but not for all of the South. It is, but there are those people. I know that family. I mean, I don't know that family,
Right, but
but I know that family. You know what I mean? I those people exist, and there are of them, but that's not life in the South.
hmm
It is a pocket of life but you've got those people everywhere.
hmm
I mean, it's just there are rural areas in every state, and every state has rednecks. So of their own, version or whatever. Ton of them up here in Michigan.
yeah, New Hampshire, Maine has their share. Of course, we talked about Maine's creepiness. You know, I will say there's some in some cases there's a little more charm to the
Dude,
Maine.
I thought
But
everybody in Maine just sat around eating lobster all the time.
oh, they do on the on the coast. Yeah, they definitely do. There's a whole thing between coastal Mainers and inland Mainers. That the coastal Mainers look down on the inland Mainers. For
Oh,
and then the inland Mainers, uh, they of course resent the coastal Mainers. So there's a whole system there. Um, and of course, Stephen King was more of an inland Mainer, but Stephen King, being from Bangor, Bangor is like one of the weirdest cities in the country because it has like maybe 30,000 or 40,000 people, but because it is like kind of like the northernmost outpost before you really get into the remote areas. It has all of these attributes that you associate with a big city. It has TV channels. All of the major TV channels are represented in Bangor.
huh.
It has a major hospital. It's got shopping malls and all these things that you normally associate with bigger areas. So it's a very fascinating town. And so Stephen King being from Bangor would have probably been very cosmopolitan by Maine standards, compared to the areas that he was traveling into where a lot of his stories took place.
That is very interesting. I did not know that.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very 'cause I mean, University of Maine is right near Bangor, so you go there and you're just like, wow, this seems like it's got more to it, but you realize like no, like I think if you do like all the outer lying towns, do like the whole metro area, it's like maybe 150,000 people, um, which is big for Maine, but for what amenities it has to offer, you if you know go to cities that size near Boston or here in Philadelphia, they wouldn't even consider having their own TV channel. But in Bangor, yeah, they have their own thing. I mean, I'm trying to,
Interesting.
I'd like to think about what kind of TV shows you could make about Maine, but I don't know if the Mainers would want their own reality show. I know Roger from Snooki and JWoww, who married JWoww, he's from up in Maine, and occasionally they would do episodes up there. But I think that
They seem to me, and this is really based on nothing, but Mainers seem to be like they would be kind of private,
they
uh,
are.
closed off,
hmm
um, and not mean or anything like that. Just keep to themselves,
Yeah, yeah,
and not want to be bothered.
yeah. Yeah, it would be, it'd be fascinating. I think they'd probably get like 2 episodes out of a reality show in Maine. They the people would want to do the show with them. Oh yeah, oh you could do a show about the lobster fishing. Sure, of course, come right on over here. We'll do a whole bunch of shows, And then
Sit down. Oh,
yeah, right. The first episode, after that, okay, well, I think we're all set. You've done enough. We're done. We don't want to do
yep.
anymore. Yep. Ma and I are gonna go home. We're gonna go to the bean supper later, and then yep, that's it. I think you got enough for your show. And that would be the end of it, yeah. And so then the producer would be like, "What are we supposed to do here?" I don't know. I'm not sure. But, you signed a contract. Yeah, it was a real nice contract. I saw it. Yep. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't mean to cause you any trouble, but yep, Ma and we've done enough. We're not doing any more of the show. Yeah. But they
you sound like the Pepperidge Farm guy.
yeah, I think he was he a man? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Oh, uh, Jed and I, we love, we watched the Bourdain episode where he went to Maine because I guess he had somebody on his crew that was from Maine, so that's why he went there. And he would interview real Mainers, but it was kind of one of those fugazi things where he was talking to a lot of transplants who had no idea about the real Maine. And real Mainers would also tell me that I don't know anything about the real Maine because I grew up on the very southern tip of the state. So, oh, you might as well be from Massachusetts. You're from Boston. You're not from Maine. So, but when he went there, he was interviewing them about this really fancy restaurant in Rockland, Maine, which is a very nice area on the coast. And they interviewed one person about the restaurant. Some hotshot chef moved there to make her own restaurant, and he's like, yeah, my daughter's a waitress there. She took me there one night, and we had a 5-course meal, and afterwards we had to stop at McDonald's to get a Big Mac for dessert because the food was so little that I had there. And that's kind of it, I think, right there. And he wasn't insulting the meal, but he was insulting the meal. He wasn't, he wasn't too good for the meal, but he was kind of, I don't need to be eating at a place like this that only serves these little portions of, pretentious meals. The guy with a white guy with dreads sitting at the table next to me talking about the different cuts of pork. I might as well just have a Big Mac. It's going to work just as well for me.
Well, I don't see them wanting to waste time or, sugarcoat anything.
No.
That's just the way I picture a Mainer being. It's very straightforward. I don't have any time for crap.
Yes. Well, though as Jen says, we aren't very straightforward either, though. We have a way of saying what we want to say without actually saying what we want to say, right? Oh, yes, it was a great meal, but I'm going to go to McDonald's and have a Big Mac because I'm still hungry.
Right.
That's that's kind of how we deliver our opinions on things. But of course, hopefully, with this show, I try not to be quite so, I think if you did a show with an actual Mainer, who really, oh yes, it was a great movie. Not really sure what was going on there for half the film. They were driving around a lot of driving in this movie.
That sounds like my review of this movie.
Right,
It's like,
yeah.
oh, I thought it was all right. I enjoyed it. Yeah, well, let me tell you what else I didn't like.
Yes, it was a very Mainer review that you gave. Oh, so maybe that's where we need to put this film, is that maybe the best way to describe the film is Jamie's Mainer review of the film.
Jamie took a trip to Maine.
Jamie took a trip to Maine and she explained the film to us. I think that might be the best place to leave it. I think that's, as you said, Jamie, it wasn't the worst thing ever. You really enjoyed it. But
there was a whole lot of nope going on in this movie.
Well, now that we've left that film aside and we're no longer in Maine, we're leaving Maine also up where it is. But why don't we discuss what we've been up to? Because one of the things I noticed in my iTunes account is that there is a new Like in It podcast.
You are damn skippy. I have finally gotten out episode 6 of Liking It, and I'm super excited about it. I think the episode turned out great. In this episode, I talk about 3 movies. I typically do 2. I do an old and a new. But this time I did the old, which was Wolf from 1994 with my good friend Gary Hill, who sometimes listens to this show. And I also did 2 brand new movies with Brian jumped in to help me cover both Late Phases and Wolf Cop,
Mm,
which Wolf Cop was super fun. I got to tell you.
that sounds fun.
Actually, Late Phases is really good too, but Wolf Cop is really fun. It's everything that you would hope to get from a movie called Wolf Cop.
It, yeah, that sounds good. Wolf Cop. Is it on Instant or anything like that, or is it?
I don't think it's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD this month,
Okay.
and I think it actually came out this past Tuesday, or as in yesterday.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not 100% positive on that, but I know it's coming out this month if it hasn't already, and so it should be available soon on some kind of instant format. But it's totally worth a watch. It's super fun, and I kind of describe it as Teen Wolf meets Buford Pusser, and or Teen Wolf meets Walking Tall, and I mean the original Walking Tall, not the one with Dwayne.
Right.
You know, um, but anyway, that's a good time, and so I'm super excited to have that episode out, and um, yeah, so people out there, give it a listen. You can go to horrorphilia.com and look for Liking It under the podcast list and find it there. Apart from that, we have recorded a new Devour the Podcast where we talked about Friday 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and we also talked about Antiviral, the film from Brandon, who is David Cronenberg's son, which is also kind of an interesting film. I like that a lot.
Mm. So two. So you've got now. Devour, you recorded it. It's not out yet.
Yeah, I don't think it has come out yet. We recorded it last Thursday, and I don't believe it's out yet, but it should be coming out sometime soon. Also, you can check out the archive for the Insomniacs playlist on Legion Podcast. I've been adding those slowly as I go along. So if you missed the live broadcasts, which I typically do on Tuesday nights, then you can catch the archived shows there. Other than that, of course, there's Evil episodes, which we didn't do. That one's only bi-weekly, so we haven't done a new episode since the last time you and I did a show. And the Skeleton Crew, I don't think we've had since the last time we did one, or maybe 102 came out. I'm not sure if it came out since last week. I don't remember. But anyway, so Skeleton Crew episode 102 is floating around out there, and that is the one where Brian joined us to discuss all things Lovecraft, which was very interesting. It was a really good time.
Nice. Yeah.
We also reviewed a fan film called The Death of Michael Myers that you can find on YouTube, and it was made by one of our cast members, and when he was 16. And we ripped it a new one, right, just from getting in, and that was a whole lot of fun. So I recommend that. It's a fun listen.
Nice. So I was gonna say for Brian, I don't feel as bad now that we only gave him a Lifetime movie, because he's had a chance to do Lovecraft and to talk about Wolf Cop. So he's I mean, we will try to rectify things, Brian, and get you on here again to talk about something other than a Lifetime movie. But he was a good sport about that. Yes, no thanks to you.
He is a good sport. He's a trooper. He watches all the stuff that I have to watch, whether he wants to or not, and he's a sweetheart. So, yeah, we'll have to give him something good. But first, we have to find something good.
We're good. Yes, and we're gonna cross our fingers and see if we can get something for you there, Brian. Right. Now, I have to say quickly about Wolf. I don't know if I've told this story before. I think I did actually tell this story about watching Wolf with my buddy, and he had the wolf mask. Every time I hear about Wolf, it's just like that.
Oh, yes.
That's my friend Petrowski.
Theater,
yes,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And he had to do his sweet Nicholson impression,
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, ma'am, do you have the time? Of course, he didn't even do the impression. He kind of chickened out, and he was just like, "Hi, I'm sorry. Do you have the time?" And yeah, she gave him a dirty look. So, but that was Petrowski, my man Petrowski, who I don't know if he ever catches a show, but if he does, hey, it was great watching Wolf with you back in 1994. That was our. Yes. Now, as far as I go, I have been still as we talked about that legendary blog review is still kind of on the shelf. So this past weekend, Jennifer and I, my lovely Jennifer, we celebrated her birthday, and we went to Atlantic City. We thought we'd just get outside of the city for a little bit, and we've since come to realize that maybe Atlantic City is not all it's cracked up to be. We had a great time together, but I think if we had our druthers, it might be to spend a little more on the hotel room in the city in Philadelphia, and then not spend as much on everything else that costs money in Atlantic City. So they really do rope you in with those cheap. We go, oh, $55 for a room. That sounds great. But then then you go, okay, well, let's get a little bit nicer room for like $80. And then you buy it, and they're like, oh, here's $40 in fees, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's still cheaper. It's still cheaper than 2 nights in the city. And then you get down there and you eat, and you're like, you get some room service, and the next thing you know, you're like, we could have just stayed in the city. So we've learned our lesson there, but it was a really great time, and so I just want to again say happy birthday, baby. Love you. I love you, and I don't know if she's listening right now, but even if she isn't, she can hear me from the other room. So that's
happy birthday, Jen.
And so yeah, and I feel bad that for the birthday present she watched this movie. But luckily it was the day after her birthday, so I would never have made her watch this movie on her birthday. I would never do that, of course. But hopefully, I will say she did get to watch. Oh, Brian said happy birthday too. All right, she just yelled thank you. Yeah, we did get to watch Chucky's the week before, so she did. She hasn't always done horrible ones with us, so that's good too.
Well, good.
Yeah, everybody's
and good for us too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, by the way, I watched Trekkies 2 after the show last week.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I prefer the first one.
Yeah.
I have to say, but it was interesting to see where those people are now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite things was some of the reactions. Commander.
Yes.
One of them being when they had a bunch of people. I guess it was like a focus group.
Yes.
I don't know what that was. When they were all in a room, and the one guy's like, "Well, we had the one who refers to herself as commander and wears a uniform to jury duty," and then it turns out she's sitting like 10 feet away from him, and I'm like, "Oh wow, okay."
Yeah. Yeah. What was that? A Trekkie focus group? Like, what is,
It was hilarious. And then people did not seem to like the Filky guy.
Exactly.
Or what was it called? Filking?
The
Is that what it's
Filking,
called?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't like him.
Yeah.
Thought that was interesting too.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I agree with you. The other thing too I liked about the first one better was that they had all of the old cast members that they interviewed, and I guess because for the new one they'd be covering the same territory again, so I guess
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was like, well, hell, they hit everybody up in the first one. There's nobody left to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, they had to get what was it? That young man, the fella from the Voyager series that everybody seemed to find attractive.
The fella.
The fella, that swell fella there who's never done anything since he was on Voyager. But hey, it was nice. Somebody who got a tattoo of him on their back. It was all.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That's got to be some kind of goal, right? That you've got to be tattooed on somebody's back if you're a Star Trek actor.
Well, I guess he hit it then.
He made it. He's immortalized, or for 30 years or so, or however long it's there for. Well, I guess we're kind of devolving out of, talking about getting tattoos on people's backs. So maybe this is as good a place to leave it. Though last week we left it on my KNS fanfic in the gay 90s. So maybe I should probably update because, again, the blog is kind of stalled. But my KNS fanfic is still going strong. While Jen was sleeping, I was typing out volume number 115, issue 16. I was typing it out in Atlantic City. And it actually takes place in 1930s Atlantic City. Our couple are still time traveling at this point. So that one should be out pretty soon for all of my fans of my KNS fanfic.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. But the loving couple are still going strong.
Look for me on the edge of my seat. That's where I'll be.
All right. Perfect. Well, I hope you all have a great week. Thank you for listening again. And we'll see you here next time at the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur.
Yep. See you later.
Welcome to America, the land of junk sleep, where it's bedtime, but you're double booked. Here, there's always one more deadline to meet, episode to watch, or meme to share. The world may not want you to sleep, but we do. Only the sleep experts at Mattress Firm can help you find the right bed at the right price. Unjunk your sleep. In store or online at mattressfirm.com today.